Hello, I'm George Gonzalez, and I'm obsessed with making games. Today is Multiplayer Monday. We're going to talk about how to start multiplayer games, how to start learning. Maybe this is your first time learning a multiplayer game, or you might be switching. You want to be trying something else because the multiplayer solution that you are trying is old, deprecated, and you see something new or different opportunities. I want to start on figuring out how to make a decision of which network solution to use or how to go about learning because there's a lot of new stuff to learn. And I want to make sure that you are learning multiplayer games at a faster speed that I did when I started and save you the headaches. And at the end of this video, my goal, I'm going to share with you some of the things that will help you launch your game, a multiplayer game, and what things to watch out for that are not usually said. Because the goal of this video and my videos in general is to be able to apply them to finished products. A lot of times, a lot of the tutorials deal with empty scenes, often not from a publishing perspective. And I want to share with you some of the things that I've learned. Over the past 4 years, I worked on multiple multiplayer games in VR, and I've learned a lot about multiplayer games and also launching titles. So I want to share with you exactly how that process goes and what things to watch out for, what things you can learn now to save you headache down the road. Because I've seen it also from friends that have worked on different things and wish they would have known about certain features ahead of time. So let's start with multiplayer games. I usually use Fusion, Photon Fusion, because it's the latest, and they have an upgraded version, Photon Fusion 2, and that's what I've used. But recently, I've been really thinking about Normcore, and I'm gonna tell you why some of the things that are nice about Normcore, and some of the things that are nice about Fusion, and maybe some of the things that are nice that are not in Unity, because Unity has a new NGO network solution, but I still think it's very new and it needs more updating. So when you start, usually you go through and how to and look at videos and you see how much content there is. And if there's not a lot of content, maybe you might turn off from a plugin or a third party asset. Ideally, yes, the best solution would be to go with the engine of your choice, like Unity, Unreal. They usually have their own version of multiplayer code. But sometimes there's more features in others. And so with Unity, for example, one of the cons with it is that they don't have host migration, which is a huge thing. And oftentimes a lot of the features that are default for Fusion are not in Unity. And so you have to code it on your own. Some of those things are a headache. And even host migration on its own, it's worth a lot of time. Depending on how much you value your time and every hour, it'll probably take you a couple weeks. And even then, it might not work the same way. So it's nice to have some of those features already created in the plugin or the third-party asset. I've been thinking a lot about Normcore because they've created some VR templates. Templates are nice to kind of get your feet wet and figure things out and to start ahead. But for multiplayer games, if you are going to launch a title and publish a game, you want to be aware of everything about that game because when it launches, you're going to be focused on errors, bugs, problems that are happening, crashes, monitoring the players. And so you want to be able to know everything about the multiplayer game that you set out because you're going to have to fix it. And you have to make sure that you fix it under pressure. Usually, when you start, you want to do scene transitions. That's where everything stems from, the foundation of your multiplayer game. How people are matched together. How does a player go where he wants to go? How do you position people where they want to be? Like they want to be with their friends. They want to go to a specific location. How do you matchmake? How do you reconnect? Where do you go? Like, what happens if there's 1,000 players? So all these questions you have to be able to answer, and those happen in the scene transition. And it's not just scene transition, but how do people match up together? How do they play the same game? That is the essence of a multiplayer game. You are in the same room with someone else. Before you start with a player controller and other things, which is okay to have a template because you need the player controller to test it out. I will test it out here in this template. But you want to make sure that the first thing you learn about a multiplayer game or a multiplayer thing in general is the scene. How do you change scenes? How do you connect? The connection, because that will determine everything else. That is the foundation, and you're going to deal with connecting players all the time in a network game. Understanding this will help you understand the other topics a lot better. I see it often that developers will go with a template and start messing around and changing things and trying to create their game mode without understanding the scene in the connection. Okay, so in Normcore, for example, I'm learning it, and I want to share with you what I've learned and how I see it different than Fusion and why I like it a lot. Normcore has this real-time API. In Fusion, they have the same thing where they have a similar thing called a runner with the connection callbacks, and it's a similar thing. But the difference is that the data store API, and these APIs don't care about the Unity scene you're in, which is great. So You could still load your scenes like you do a single player game, and the only thing you have to do is make sure you connect to the right room. Yeah, and we're gonna go over the code. But the main idea is that you switch scenes, and you handle disconnect separate than your scene loading. So you could probably be in the same scene and connect to a different room, which is really cool. In Fusion, you can't do that because Fusion, what happens with Fusion is that they try to make it easier for you to matchmake and faster, and so they handle all the scene transitions for you, which is good and bad. The good thing is that you don't have to think too much about it. They'll just say, okay, just say runner dot connect to this room and go there, and it'll go to the scene and it'll connect. The only problem is that it doesn't give you much power to change that logic. And so, for example, in Fusion, if I want to connect to this room in the same scene, I have to unload the scene in Unity, go to another scene, random scene, black scene, so I fade out, I go to an empty scene, I have to come back just so that I can connect to the same scene. It's crazy, but that's how you do it. In Normcore, I can do a seamless scene transition super fast. Like right now, I'll show you. So we're gonna do this. So we have room A, B, and C, and D in the same scene. We don't have to change scenes. I'm gonna show you how it works. And I think this feature is super cool. You have in Normcore, you're able to do as many scene transitions as you can in Unity. You can do it additively. You can do seamless. You can do async if you want. And so we'll go, let me just show you, because it's easier if I just show you what's happening. The fact that you can do this seamless is so nice for the player experience. And this is more for this is VR specific. So I think Normcore is great for the VR. They have a test scene. Okay, so I'm in room D. It says right there, current room. And I press on, let's say room A. It's connecting. And now I'm connected to room A. And because there's no one here, I won't see anything. But the idea is that you can be in the same room, and in the same scene, but change rooms so you can connect with different people. So the idea is that you could, if you're trying to find your friends and you have a specific room code, you don't have to change scenes. You just type in the room code and it will unload the other players and load the new player starting in their room, which is super cool. You can even say toggle through different rooms and keep refreshing type thing until you find players you like to play with. I love it because in Fusion, you can't do that. You have to go out and in and come back. You can't do it. And so this is awesome. This is great. And I will leave a link below for this because I'm not trying to teach you how to code. Okay? You have these tutorials that will help you code. And here we have the load scene additively, and it shows you how the code routine works. What he's doing is he's using Unity to load a scene and wait for it to load. And then what they do is they find the real-time object and then connect to that room by name. And that's it. Okay. So you're doing, so you have the scene. And then you're loading scenes. When that's done, you do the real time and then you load that scene. Okay. And then you connect. Okay. So you're doing two things, but it's pretty simple because you're moving scenes. Now, if you're in the same scene, we're going to look at how to do it seamless like we just did. Okay. And here we have a connect. And if you've seen my previous videos on Fusion, there's a similar thing that you have to check if you're connected already. You don't connect again because you're already there. If it's right in the progress, is going through, then you don't want to do it twice. You destroy whatever's left behind. You say, hey, disconnect. So if you're swapping rooms, change them, and you just get rid of all the old stuff. And then in here you have the API. You just want to make sure that you have the match URL. Then you create a new room, and you make sure you set up for when the state changes, and then you connect to the room like we did before, like you saw before in the tutorial. So this is specifically when you're trying to change rooms but not change scenes. And then in here you also have if you need to swap rooms, the previous one you disconnect from the previous one because you're gonna connect to a new one. So this is for network, right? You want to disconnect the previous connection and connect to a new one. It's super simple in the sense of understanding. You have a connection, you're going to start a new one. So before you start a new connection, you got to disconnect from the previous one. Just like a phone, you got to hang up. You can't pause it like in the phones. You disconnect and you connect to the next one. You have some logics for swapping rooms, right? If you need to swap rooms, and it's all comments in here, and it's pretty straightforward. It's nice and simple. And if you need to change rooms, you can do that too. right? Like we saw in the additive scene, you can load the scene and then just connect through that because it has all the settings. This is just so if you want to change the settings and reconnect with the same scene, a different connection, you can do that, which is super cool. That is what you want to learn how to do, because this is what you're going to need to know when something goes wrong. And also is how you determine what network solution you use. Because if you don't understand, oftentimes developers will spend years developing their game, learning the new network solution, and then when they're like, because I've seen that with CEOs, and they'll ask, okay, which solution we're going to use. The developer chooses, they build this game, and then like at the end, the CEO is like, well, we wanted this for matchmaking. We want the player to be able to do X, Y, and C, and then A, B, and C. And the developer's like, we can't because or they're like, okay, let's try and figure it out. And then you have this hacky way of connecting, and you're stuck because you spent so much time development for that specific integration that now you have to jerry rig it to work with that solution. And that sucks because I've been there. And so my advice to you guys is, if you're starting, whether it's starting a new project, this multiplayer, and even if it's your first time, your second or your third, I mean, if it's your third, you probably understand this. The first thing you want to know is, how are you going to match players together? Is this a competitive game? Do you need ranking? How are you doing this? That will determine your network solution. And then you can do an R&D to test that with each game. Okay, Normcore has seamless transitions for VR. It's great for VR. Fusion doesn't have that, but it might be more robust for other matchmaking, like with more players in PC. And then you can go on. They have Quantum, which is more for physics-based iterations, and maybe you want to do something that has better reliability on physics. That's Quantum. So a lot of things depend on what you're trying to choose. And so you have to think about, how am I going to match players together? What do I want to do with my game to get people to play together? And that will determine how you test these things, because you can test them early on. I just started at Normcore, and now I can test it. And the last thing that I want to talk about that is huge, that not many developers understand until they launch their first title, and that is launch. How to prepare for launch. There's no second chance at a first impression. You'll never have a second chance. For Monkey Do, we had a lot of players up front, and it was crazy. And we had issues with a lot of players. We had a bug with Fmod and voice chat with Meta, and something that we didn't take into account because a lot of people had Oculus Party. So oftentimes you have to figure out, what tools do the players use when they jump into multiplayer games? Do they have third-party apps that they use? Do they record? Do they have a third-party app that they connect with? Because those things are gonna connect or clash with your other third parties, like whether it's the connection or voice chat. Normcore, for example, has voice chat within that, whereas Fusion has voice chat as a separate plugin. So you have to pay for voice chat connection and Fusion connection, which sucks, and it's a hassle sometimes. And so it's nice that Normcore has it together. A lot of times you have to think about, what if 1,000 players started playing the game? How is that gonna change my game? Because when you often build multiplayer games, you test it out with you and your buddies. You might have big tests where 10 people join the game, and you have an influx of beta testers, and you test the servers, and it seems all fine and dandy. But the problem is that the connection and the matchmaking behaves a lot different when it's actually being run by 1,000+ players at a time. So like, are people connecting when they matchmake? And sometimes you won't be able to test with 1,000 players, but you have to have that mentality, because oftentimes I've seen where decisions are made based on the experience of 10 players. For example, in Monkey Do, when we launched the title, we had a lot of ideas of, players will jump in here, or they'll be like, hey, what's up? And they'll try to party up with each other in the lobby or in the social hub, and then they'll go together to the game. All these things that we thought, oh, hey, we tested it. But when there's 1,000 people, the likelihood of them finding each other is zero, because they're just, people are coming in and out, in and out, in and out, and there's thousands of rooms, thousands of servers, whatever you want to call it. People are not going to find each other. They're just going to boom, 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 go in. And so you have to prepare for that and say, okay, how are we going to help the players find their friends? How are they going to matchmake with their friends? Do they have a room code? Are they going to be able to do a friend request or a friend system in your game? Or does the platform like Steam, Meta provide a friend request system that you can use and utilize so that you can go to the same place? And even those setups, Meta has destinations that kind of work. The problem is, again, like thinking about the numbers. Okay, another example. Destinations. Meta has a thing where if you have friends, you can go to where they're playing, to the game they're playing. The problem is that most of the times, the places they are at are full. Because let's say I have a logic for a social hub. People are coming in and out. Every 8, let's say the max player count is 8. And the moment those 8 fill up, another server spins up and more 8 players come. And it keeps doing that. Okay, so if your friend is in the social hub in the town, that thing gets, if your game is popular, or even if it's not popular, if you have like 100 CC, for the most time, like, they'll spin up another server. Even if you have 30 players at a time, those servers will be filled up for the most part. And so as the new player comes in, they won't find him. And so they'll go to Meta. You'll see the destination. Oh, my friend's playing this game. Okay, I want to join him. The problem is that if the room is maxed out, how am I going to have that player matchmake with him? I can't, because I would have to kick another player that has nothing to do with that. And so just so that the other player can come in. Does that make sense? So the set destination is kind of nice, but not really. So the idea behind destinations probably was good in paper, but not in implementation. A better way would be probably like that you set, and you can do this with destinations. The thing is that you have to code for it. Is a destination, you can have 8 people in a party. Let's say we have a max. So when those people create a room, we should make a private room for that group, right? So every time someone sets a destination, they can do that. But because Meta has certain things, features, and you have to let people know where they're at, most of the time, if someone is in a destination and you can see it on their friend request, you won't be able to join them because it's impossible to find that room empty, because within seconds, it's going to be filled up, right? Boom, 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 boom. It's going to get filled up. So it's hard to program for that unless you set it up in a better way. So those are examples of things that you might think, oh, this is good. And you spend time developing, and it will cost because it's hours of development, and then you have to test it out. And so you'll develop these features only to realize that they don't work like you thought they would. Because at launch time, you will hopefully, you will have thousands of players coming in and out. So you have to think, that is my tip, my top tip that I could give you that will save you time from someone that's published before. If I were to give myself advice when I started this, it would be this. To think, obviously start with scene transitions, figure that out, talk to your CEO and say, okay, what are we gonna do for matchmaking? The second one is, how does that matchmake look like for 1,000 people? Let's say 1,000 people come in at 1 second. What happened? What's the logic? And as 1,000 people go through your game, in and out, in and out, in and out of games, close up, and stuff like that, what is the scenario that we want? And what's gonna happen? And then how do you find your friends in that scenario where there's 1,000 people coming in and out? And that will give you a better idea of what you need to prepare for, and it will make your game more successful at launch time. I promise you, because I've done it, I've seen it, and I've learned my lesson. If you need more help in figuring your multiplayer games, any questions you have, I have a community, Endgame Devs, where I help people one-on-one and actually apply the principles that I'm talking to you about, and I tailor it to your needs, your projects, and your goals. Please, if you like these and this was useful for you, leave a like, subscribe. Every Monday, I'll show up and give you tips for multiplayer games. We'll see you next week.